Yo, what is up, guys? This is my updated Burning Abyss deck profile. So I have made quite a lot of changes since the last profile, which was before the ban list. I've also done a lot of testing with this list, and I can safely say that this is probably the best list moving forward for this format. I feel like trap cards are not really good right now, so this is not really a trap heavy build. This is more of a kind of hand trap heavy focus build. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get into the list. So starting off, we have triple Scarm, the searcher of the deck, obviously. Then we have triple Graff, of course. These are probably the best ones to play at 3. Maybe Farfa, but these are like, you can safely play these at 3 because you typically want to be resolving their effects like all the time, like every single turn pretty much. And double Seer, you don't really need to play 3. I was playing 3 before because of Desires, so like you always, when you play Desires, obviously you want to be playing multiple copies just in case. But 2 is pretty good, honestly. Never really missed a 3rd, to be honest. And then for the other 2 ofs, we have double Farfa and then double Libic. So I have these in ranked from like best BAs to worst. So like Sir being like probably the second best BA, Farfa being like the 4th, and then Libic maybe 5th. So Farfa's like, aside from Snow, this is your main form of interruption off of Beatrice. And then Libic is a good card, helps you extend through like awkward board states, like if your opponent nibs you, or I do play nib in this deck, so when you nib, like you can still push through with, or not push through, but you can still play your BA cards because of a card like Libic, for example. Also, another thing I wanted to say is like I view the BAs as extenders, and I think a lot of people tend to forget that. Like, some people sometimes when they play this deck, they're so focused on using the graveyard effects, which you definitely, like, you do. Like Graff and Sir, for example, you definitely want to be resolving their effects. But sometimes you just want to special these out of hand just to, like, force out, like, hand traps from your opponent sometimes. So, like, don't be afraid to use them as extenders, because every single BA is an extender. So I just wanted to touch on that. Then we have, for the utility ones, Calcab, Barbar, and then Alich. Honestly, Calcab is probably the worst BA. It, like, never comes up for me. It's good in theory, like, it should come up, but it comes up maybe, like, once or twice every 5 or 6 games. It just doesn't come up enough for me, so I can definitely see myself cutting this in the future. But it's another name, and different names is pretty important for BA, because like the worst hands for BA are like, or like the quote-unquote brick hands for this deck is like if you draw like multiples of the same name. Those are like probably the worst or clunkiest hands of the deck. But yeah, that's pretty much all the BAs, the main ones anyway. And then, of course, we have the honorary BAs. You got triple Tour Guide, and then double Rhino. So I like playing triple Tour Guide. I know a lot of people are on 2, but personally I like 3. Just being able to Scarm search this during every end phase is like, it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, and like they're gonna be forced to answer it pretty much every single time. And there's been games where I've resolved this 3 times, like pretty often. When I have tried out 2, and whenever I've played 2, I always miss the 3rd, because sometimes you mill one, or sometimes you know, you'll resolve 2 and then, or not resolve, but you'll play 2 in the game. Maybe they both get hand trapped or negated, and then you still want that 3rd to be able to search. Because when you search, like, so like let's say you have Scarm Engrave and you search like Graff or Farfa or Sir, it's like kind of underwhelming because it doesn't really do anything in your hand, especially once you already have like an established board. That's what I personally think. Double Rhino is pretty good as well. I probably wouldn't play 3, like I wouldn't play 3 and then 3 of this, just because I feel like there's too many normal summons if you include Graff and Sir. So I feel like 2 is a good number, good spot. You can definitely play around with the ratios if you wanted, like triple Rhino, 2 Tour Guide, but personally I think triple Tour Guide is probably the best. And then 1 Snow. Probably this card's really busted in this deck because your whole graveyard is basically a resource, so being able to really abuse this is like really strong. And this is gonna be like your main thing to send off of Beatrice, which is why like I don't really play triple Farfa. I was playing triple Farfa before, but honestly you're like almost never sending Farfa. You just exclusively want to be sending this. Okay, and then for the rest of the monsters, which is, you know, more or less hand traps, so we have triple Ash, double Nib, and then double Ogre. So these are probably, okay, so Ash is like, I'm not gonna say it's the best hand trap of the format, but Ash is just generic. It's good against like pretty much, you're gonna be able to use it against like every single deck. The best hand traps of the format are probably, Ogre is probably being like the top one, and then Nib probably being second, close second. Just because like a lot of decks are playing Scythe, or like combo decks are pretty prevalent in the format, you know, like Phantom Knights and Prank Kids, like with the Adventure Engine and whatnot. I guess to some extent, like, you have other decks as well, like Sword Soul, Virtual World, which are also, you know, pretty solid combo decks. Well, Virtual World is more like it's kind of mid-rangey. I don't know. It's kind of like, it's like fringe combo deck / mid-range, but like a lot of decks are going into like Hulk combos and like trying to Scythe you. So you need to like, you need high impact hand traps, and Ogre and Nib being like some of the best. So like Ogre is really good against like obviously the Adventure Engine, being able to hit Griffin Rider, or even hitting their token generator card. Ogre's also pretty good against the Halka Fibrax. I couldn't think for a second. But yeah, this card's really good against that. Like, because once you hit the Hulk, like, what are they gonna do with just a tuner on board? They can't even go into Auroradon anymore. And then if you draw like Ogre plus Nib, that's like really strong. So let's say like you nib their board, and then like let's say they try to Griffin Rider and you Ogre them, and it's like really strong. I mean, there is an argument to play like either 3 Ogre or 3 Nib, but I don't really know. I feel like Ash is pretty underwhelming, to be honest. Like, when you play against any deck that plays like the adventure stuff, like Ash is kind of underwhelming against them. So I have thought about like cutting a 3rd Ash and maybe playing either a 3rd Ogre or a 3rd Nib, but you know, for right now, I think this is pretty solid. And then this was probably the biggest change I made to the deck. Is obviously we're playing the Phoenix Enforcer pack, or DPE package, I should say. Honestly, it does a lot for this deck. Like, it just helps your grind game, allows you to apply a lot of pressure to the opponent. Because I was testing out this deck without the DPE, and honestly, the deck felt like it was missing that kind of like oomph, like that really, like something to propel the deck more to be able to compete better with the meta decks. Because without DPE, I feel like this deck falls more and more into like rogue category. But with DP, this card I would say is like, it's probably still rogue, but it's definitely better. Like, you'll definitely catch people off guard, and you're gonna force your opponents to grind a lot more, which is what happened for me when I was testing out this deck at my locals. And then that's pretty much it for all the monsters. So we're gonna move on to spells. So of course, double Fusion Destiny. Card's insane, honestly. Like, I wouldn't blame Konami for banning it or putting it to 1, to be perfectly honest. Double Designator. This card was absolutely phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie. This card, so every time I drew it, it pretty much came up. Or like in all my games, pretty much. Like, this card always comes up, and there would be times where, like, you know, my hand would be full combo, and I was like, man, I really wish I had a Designator to be able to ensure my plays go through. So Designator is really nice because it's kind of like Called By, right? But at the same time, it's like more versatile than Called By. Plus, we do play Fusion Destiny. So let's say your opponent like hard draws Fusion Destiny. You know, they try to make DPE, so you just cross out, banish the Designator, and it's honestly really strong. So Designator, really, really insane. I think, honestly, if I would bump up, I want to bump this up to 3, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, the only real major changes I would make to this deck is probably play triple Designator, in all honesty. Double Chalice, Called By, and then Foolish. So Chalice, I think it's decent. Obviously, if I had, you know, Forbidden Droplet, these would be Droplets, but I think Chalice is a good alternative. Chalice is pretty underrated, honestly. So like, against Flenders, Chalice is better than Droplet. And more people are starting to play around Droplet a lot more. So Chalice is kind of like, it's not bad. Like, it definitely catches people off guard. They don't expect it. When I was playing at locals, people wouldn't expect the Chalice to be like, oh, okay, like, they, you know, maybe they were playing around Droplet, or they'd be expecting it. So Chalice is actually pretty decent. It's not as good as Droplet, obviously, but it's good enough. It gets you there. So if you guys are like obviously playing on a budget, you know, Chalice isn't too bad. And then for the last trap card, which is triple Imperm. Probably the 3rd best hand trap of the format. Nice thing is it's not once per turn, and like if you're going, so like you're going second cards essentially, like, or your quote unquote board breaking cards would be like Chalice and Imperm. Imperm is not once per turn, so you can like Imperm, force out a negation, and then if you draw like a second Imperm, it's not even that bad because then you can use it. And then if you draw like Imperm and Chalice, it's basically, you're basically going to be forcing out their negations. So yeah, triple Imperm is really good. I definitely think it's like mandatory. Okay, so moving on to the extra deck. Not too much has changed with the extra deck, to be honest. Double Dante, and then Beatrice, best XZs in the game in my opinion. Really good. Yeah, not much else to say. I was trying to think of something funny to say, but just good cards, honestly. And then one Downerd, of course, and then the one Zeus. Zeus is crazy. Like a good one of the best reasons to play BA in my opinion is because you can play cards like DPE and Zeus in the same deck, which not a lot of decks can do, not even like the meta decks. So this deck kind of has like that unfair advantage. So yeah, I mean, Zeus is just crazy, honestly. Really, really good card. And then for the links, Cherubini, of course, probably one of the best link 2s in the game. Anaconda, obviously for DPE. Lina, I couldn't think of the name for a second. Card's pretty good. Honestly, I never make this. Like, it could have came up a couple of times when I played at locals, but I just found Dark Charmer, like, honestly better, which I also do play, Dark Charmer. They're both pretty good. They both kind of serve the same purpose, right? So Lina is kind of interchangeable in my opinion. I think it's very good, but Dark just came up a lot more for me. Because people forget that Dante and Snow are lights, so you can very easily make this. And you can steal, like, your opponent's Ogre. If you're against Eldritch, you can steal their Golden Lord. There's some other, like, niche cards you can take as well. But I played the two. Honestly, I found Dark Charmer a lot better than Lina for most games. So honestly, I might cut the Lina for, like, an IP, but Dark Charmer was probably the best for sure between the two. Phoenix, honestly, hard, like, almost never summon this thing, which is kind of surprising. Like it's very good, but I think I only made it like once or twice. Every time I've been, testing. It honestly doesn't come up that much. This is another card that's kind of like interchangeable. So like Lina and Phoenix are just kind of like toolboxy cards. Okay, so moving on to other Link monsters. So we got Unicorn, Appaloosa, and then Access Code. So these were all great, honestly. Appaloosa is super good in this deck. I didn't make this that much, but throughout testing, like, it is very good. Like, when you make it, like, Appaloosa plus Beatrice is probably like a good salt. Like, so let's say you can't go for a game, right? Because that happens a lot with this deck. Because Access Code is obviously, it's like your game finisher, but a lot of the time Access Code usually isn't enough to kill your opponent in one turn sometimes. So usually I'll just go for Appaloosa, like, if I know I don't have game. If I'm like, oh man, I can't really, go for game, so I'll just go on an Appaloosa, and usually that's like good enough to buy you a turn. That way next turn you can try and like kill them that turn. So yeah, these were all great, honestly. And for the fusions, of course, Phoenix Enforcer, and then Purple Dante. I did actually summon this quite a bit throughout, locals and whatnot. So I was very happy to be able to summon this. And his send is cost, so like even if like your opponent has like a skill drain or like a Baguska, you can still like pitch, a Sur out of your hand, revive back a Dante. That way you have more field presence. So that's good. And then if it dies, you get to rip a card, which is pretty good. And then Phoenix Enforcer, card's insane. Like I said, it does so much for this deck. It like propels BA to, like, in my opinion, it makes it a cut above like most of the rogue decks. I think any rogue deck that can play DPE is probably gonna be a cut above the rest of the rogue decks, in my opinion. So that's the extra deck. I think the only changes I would make is probably like maybe cut Lina for like an IP. I think that would be like the only change, because I wish IP, I think in testing IP came up like once, because I detached milled 1 off Dante, obviously to detach the Rhino so I can special out Surf from the deck, and I actually ended up milling a Dasher, so it was really bad. So I was like, oh man, like in that instance I wish I had the IP, but honestly it rarely comes up. So for the side deck, the 1 Pinkertops, triple Lancia, and then 1 Token Collector. I've thought about playing 2, but to be honest, you don't really need to play 2 because you have cards like Rhino, which can basically send it. You also have cards like Beatrice. Cards mainly for like the adventure stuff, prank kids, or like any Hulk Auroradon combos. Like Token Collector is really good against, because it just completely like screws up their combo. So pretty good cards. Token Collector is another card like that you could say like BA kind of has an unfair advantage, right? Because you could even main deck this, because you can send it off cards like Rhino, Beatrice. It's honestly really good. So if I was going into like a regional or like a major event where I know a lot of people are going to be playing meta, then I would for sure be main decking 1 token collector. And then for back row cards, Twister and then Duster. So my locals, a lot of people don't really play back row decks, or at least from my time playing there, nobody really plays back row decks. So I honestly never sided these in, but they're, you know, they're good. They're nice to have in your sideboard. Cosmic is another card worth considering, but I feel like Twister's like better in BA. But if I was going to like a major event, then they would probably be Cosmic Cyclones. And then a triple Dark Ruler for when you go second, because this deck honestly struggles going second. Like it's really rough. So like going second, your main game plan is to just try and break their board. So you just go Dark Ruler and then go into Zeus and then wipe their board. And usually that's enough against most decks. So Dark Ruler plus Zeus is like really strong. And then for the trap cards, triple Judgment. Whoop. My apologies. For the last trap card, we have triple Judgment and then red Reboot. So Judgment was actually insane, honestly. So every time I would go first, I would always side these in. And honestly, they were really good. So like if you have DPE, Beatrice, like, and a Judgment, it was GG pretty much. Like that's an Omni Negate plus like a Snow and then a DPE pop. It's like really strong. Or I think one time I made like Appaloosa plus Beatrice with DPE, and then I set a Judgment, and it was basically game at that point. So like Judgment's honestly insane. Just, you know, really, it was honestly really good just having a Omni Negate, because another thing for BA as well is like BA can't really put up negates, like, or like an unfair board. BA's boards are usually just kind of like good enough. Like Beatrice plus DPE is like, it's gonna be your primary turn 1 board. So like just having a Judgment to back up those cards in case your opponent tries to like Droplet you or Dark Ruler you, for example. Like just having like that insurance protection is really good. Plus, like, even if they don't, just having an extra negate or having an extra Omni Negate / like summon negation on you is like really good. And yeah, that pretty much concludes the side deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed the BA deck profile. I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. So if you know, personally, a lot of people don't really like this format, which is, you know, pretty understandable. But you know, if you guys are enjoying the format, just play a deck that you really like, and I'm sure you guys will have fun. I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. And if you guys like the deck profile, please leave a thumbs up, and you know, consider subscribing and hitting that notification button. And I hope you all have a great day.